Upstairs, Downstairs, Episode 1. Production number 1701. Data recording 3rd of the 4th, 74, Take 1, Part 1.
I fancy it's time. Edward, Ruby. Ready, Edward? Very well, Ruby. Right, Edward. Oh, what have you done, girl?
Miss Judson, just wait.
No, it's all right, Rose. Is it probably down this time, Daisy?
Yes, Miss Judson.
Ruby, what were you thinking of? If anybody had seen that, they would have thought we was a nest of spies.
Sorry, Mrs. Bridges. It came off of me.
No, never mind, my girl, never mind. There's no harm done.
Well, stop that noise now and go and see about the tea.
Yes, Mrs. Bridges.
Oh, that girl. We ought to send her to fight for the Kaiser. The war will soon be over then.
I'm glad we used this green stuff. I won't be able to see a thing through it.
Possibly we'll need to put drawing pins in at the side. No inadvertent chinks. Let us be the motto in this household.
Yes, Mr. Hudson.
Mr. Hudson, you don't seriously think that the Zeppelins are going to get as far as London, do you?
Well, if they do, I'm going to climb up the string and stick a hat pin in them. And if the Kaiser comes over, I'll stick a hat pin in him too.
Right, Mrs. Bridges. Though, strictly speaking, I don't believe the Zeppelins have got strings attached. Rose, Edward, Daisy, we will now go and draw the curtains upstairs. Come on, look sharp now. Georgina didn't come into tea.
No. Billy Linton's on leave. She's gone to a tea dansant with him.
I suppose that extraordinary form of entertainment will become more popular than ever now. With all the street lamps turned out, people will want to get home early.
I doubt if Georgina will. Yes, Hudson.
If we might draw the curtains, madam.
Rather early, isn't it?
I thought we'd better make sure that the blackout is in order, sir, since I understand that the street lamps are not going to be lit tonight.
I see.
Very well, Hudson.
I trust we're not offending against the Defence of the Realm Act.
I will send Edward outside, sir, to make sure that there are no chinks.
There's another one done. I do hate sewing curtains. I must try and get hold of some more black material for the spare room curtains.
Spare room? You expecting visitors?
Not really. Prudence wants to hold her committee meeting here tomorrow.
Committee?
Her Belgian Refugee Committee.
Now, Hazel, you're... You know, I passed two smartly dressed women in Whitehall yesterday. One said to the other, "Have you got your Belgian refugees yet?" As if it was a new fashion in house furnishing.
But if they have nowhere to go, Richard?
Hazel, no more committees. You've taken on too much already.
Oh, I haven't really. Anyway, I prefer to be kept busy.
I know.
Do you suppose James was at Mons?
Yes, it does seem likely.
I wish he could write more often.
Oh, I expect we shall hear before long.
Things are bad, aren't they?
It's quite serious. If the Belgians give up Antwerp without a fight, the Germans will drive straight through to the coast.
That would mean a German invasion?
Well, it will certainly bring the possibility a great deal closer. If only I could take some active part in it all.
You have a voice in Parliament.
Oh, yes, to criticise Asquith for his conduct of the war. Which is necessary, I suppose, but which hardly seems patriotic. Or even particularly effective. Anyway, don't let Prudence talk you into anything.
I won't.
But they were sweeping snow out of the carriages in Edinburgh, Mr. Hudson.
I dare say they were, Edward, but it was not snow off the boots of Russian soldiers.
But I was talking to this friend of mine in the Crown and Anchor.
Was he there himself?
Well, no, but he was talking to a friend who knew one of the porters.
I dare say.
And there was that rouble they found in the penny in the slot machine near Durham.
Ruby, have you been gossiping with that butcher's boy again? I'll go and fetch your plates. Come along, everybody. We've got a nice bit of haddock for our IT today. Don't let it spoil. Edward, put that paper away.
Mr. Hudson, how comes this then? If it isn't true, how does it get put about? I mean, it's in the paper, clear as daylight. 90,000 Russian soldiers passing through England on their way to France. 90,000?
I mentioned the matter to the master, and he said it was 90,000 eggs.
Eggs?
A cable was sent which read 90,000 dispatched from Archangel. But it was not soldiers, it was eggs.
Oh, yeah, well, they might say that. Well, no bacon, Mrs. Bridges.
The mistress says we've all got to economise.
Yeah, that's all very well, but our keep is part of our wages.
Edward, if the greatest sacrifice we have to make is to eat haddock without the customary roll of bacon, we will not have much to complain about.
Well, the war will be over by Christmas anyway.
I wouldn't be too sure of that, Daisy.
How are things on the war front, Miss Hudson?
Rather grave, Mrs. Bridges, I'm afraid. The German attack has been halted in the River Marne, but Paris is still threatened. And there was a wee hint in the Times today that the Belgians might not be able to hold Antwerp.
Oh,
And it would appear that the Russian army suffered a severe defeat several weeks ago.
I don't know why we were fighting on the same side as them Russians anyway. Nasty lot of anarchists.
The anarchists, Mrs. Bridges, are exiles who, in my opinion, should all be clapped into prison immediately. But it's only natural that we should be allies of the Russians, the Tsar being a cousin of our king.
So is the German Kaiser, isn't he, Mr. Hudson?
There are misalliances, Edward, in every great family.
Well, I don't care what happens as long as Eddie don't get mixed up in it. He may have to, Daisy. Like Lord Kitchener said, his country needs him.
Hold your tongue, Ruby. If this year prescription comes in, that'll be quite time enough for Edward to go.
I trust that should the need arise, every true Briton will enlist without the need of conscription, Mrs. Bridges. But in my opinion, that time has not yet come.
I hope it never will.
Well, we shall see, Daisy. For the moment, Edward's duty lies here. Ruby, pepper, please.
Well, I said to Connie Harcourt, I cannot understand these people. I mean, naturally one keeps one's butler and chauffeur, and for the sake of the horses, one cannot part with one's grooms. Now, I thought we should have sent our under gamekeepers, but Henry said the poachers would become so tiresome.
Well, your husband is a justice of the peace, isn't he? Perhaps he could sentence the poachers to enlist immediately.
And it's no laughing matter, Prudence. We have sent 7 servants from our townhouse alone. And yet here are all these people with their houses full of able-bodied men and refusing to part with them. How old do you suppose the butler is here?
Hudson? Oh, he must be...
No, I shall have a word from Mrs. Bellamy. She comes from Wimbledon, I believe. Oh, this war is going to be a boon to the middle classes. What with the committees and sewing parties, and nobody being too particular, they are going to get in everywhere. Where is Mrs. Bellamy?
Well, Hudson said she'd gone shopping.
I'm sorry.
Ah, he's here. Oh, my dear, I don't think you've met Lady Berkhamsted.
How do you do? I would have been here sooner, but on my way back, there was a woman sitting on the doorstep.
What, of this house?
A drunk, I suppose.
No, she was a charwoman.
A charwoman? Why, surely you could have left it to the servants.
She got a telegram before she left home this morning, saying that her husband had been killed in France. Well, she came to Eaton Square as usual, but on the way home, it came to her. She got as far as here, and then, like suddenly being drowned in grief, I touched her. I spoke to her, and she didn't hear me. I've never seen anyone crying quite so dreadfully.
It's very distressing.
Well, I couldn't just leave her. Mrs. Bridges is giving her some tea in the kitchen.
Well, I think you were quite right to get her off the streets. No, really, these people have absolutely no self-control. Personally, I agree with Mrs. Edward Littleton. Mourning should not be allowed. People should be proud to feel that they have given their nearest and dearest to their country's cause.
Well, perhaps you'll feel that later. Naturally, at first, she's, Well, shall we set to work for our gallant Belgian refugees? Lady Hardcastle was so sorry she couldn't be here. She has her own committee meeting this morning.
Connie would have a committee of her own.
Would you care for coffee to be served, madam?
Yes, please, Edward.
How old are you?
Me? I'm 25, madam. My lady.
And you are not married?
No, my lady?
Mrs. Bellamy, you really will have to think of sending him to enlist. We all have to make sacrifices, you know. And it is up to people like us to set an example to the others.
Yes. Thank you, Edward.
Mrs. Arthur Harrower is willing to serve on the committee.
Oh, not Mrs. Harrower. A more tiresome, encroaching woman I have yet to meet.
Yes, but she has that large house, and she's willing to take 2 Belgian families.
Oh, certainly. I have no objection to her doing that.
Well, you've taken long enough.
What?
Do they want coffee?
Oh, yeah.
The poor creatures are coming over in fishing boats, dredgers, even colliers, anything to get away. Most of them have left all their possessions behind and have only what they stand up in. It's too tragic.
Dreadful.
How many are there?
Well, they say 5,000 at least. And if the German advance continues, we can expect twice that number.
Oh, good heavens, where are we going to put them all?
Well, there are reception centres, of course. There's a large one at Wandsworth, but they can't stay there. More arriving all the time. Oh, thank you, Edward. Of course, many of them are just simple peasants. And the best thing would be to send them straight out into the country onto farms or big estates where they can work on the land.
Well, Henry has some cottages at Brexley. I dare say he could put them in there, temporarily, of course.
That would be excellent. And then we must draw up a list of friends who are ready to take in the better class Belgian into their home.
Well, I should have thought the better class Belgian would have relatives in England with whom they could stay.
Oh, my dear Violet, not all of them. Angela Carstairs was telling me the most tragic tale yesterday of a comte and comtesse who fled from their chateau with all their children, arrived at the reception centre absolutely penniless. She'd even left her jewels behind. Well, I mean, we must do something for people like that. Now, Hazel dear, how many can you take?
I would like to do what I can, but I shan't have much time to look after them, and I don't want it all to fall on the servants.
Mrs. Bellamy, we can hardly sit on committees like these, asking other people to help the war effort, unless we are prepared to do something ourselves.
Yes, of course. I expect we can take one family.
I wonder what they'll be like. I read a book once, one of Miss Liss's. It was called The Scarlet Pimpernel, and it was all about this gallant Englishman what saved the aristos.
Harry, what?
Aristos. That's French for lords and ladies.
Oh.
Here, ours are Belgian aristos, aren't they? That's right. Yes, this one I do. It's got Lady Marjorie's monogram on it.
Oh,
No.
where? Oh,
I used to do them myself.
I think I'll give them my stuffed hair. Do we know how many to expect, madam?
Well, Lady Prudence said she'd try not to make it more than 3. That might be a mother and father and 1 child, or a mother and 2 children.
I've ordered the spare room to be got ready, madam, and Rose is putting a cot and a small bed into the nursery.
Oh, that's splendid. Good morning. Did you enjoy yourself last night?
Oh, yes. Billy said it was the last opulent evening before going off to the dreadful rigours of camp in Dark Escape. I thought I'd go and stay with the Fox Breedens for a few days, and then I could see him.
In camp?
He says he can come over for dinner when he's tucked the men up in bed.
I see.
Uncle Richard says we're going to have some Belgian refugees. What fun.
Yes. Oh, Hudson, I wondered if there were any toys in the house.
Oh, yes, madam, there are some in the nursery cupboard, which belong to Miss Elizabeth and Captain James.
Good. I'll go through them.
I'll do it if you like, Hazel.
Oh, would you? Thank you, Georgina.
Shall I do it now?
Is that all right, Hudson?
Certainly, madam. I will send Daisy out to help you, Miss Georgina.
Thank you, Hudson.
Will there be anything further, madam?
Yes. Hudson, do you happen to know if Edward is thinking of enlisting?
Edward? Oh, certainly not, madam. I have explained to Edward that the time may come when it would be right for him to enlist, but that for the moment his duty lies here, especially this night.
Yes. That's what I thought.
Is that a post, Edward?
Yes, sir.
It gets later every day. Oh, Hudson, have a lunching out, but dining at home.
Very good, sir. Edward!
Hudson?
What were you thinking of putting the letters into the master's hand instead of presenting them on a salver?
But I was going to put them on the salver, Mr. Hudson, but I didn't have time.
We are not going to get slapdash in our ways just because there's a war on.
Nothing from James, I'm afraid. If there had been bad news, we should have heard.
Yes.
Well, you're getting your Belgian refugees after all.
Why, I'm sorry, Richard.
I dare you did what you thought was right. If you hadn't, it wouldn't have been you.
I'm afraid it isn't quite as simple as that. Oh, I do feel sorry for them. But I think perhaps it was much more wanting to show that we were as patriotic as Lady Berkhamsted.
Anyway, we made the right decision. These people are our allies. They've suffered terribly. The least we can do is take them into our house and do what we can for them.
Miss Lizzie never was much of a one for dolls, so someone might as well get the use of her. There's a little boy who can play with this. Here, Eddie. Look, haven't they come up lovely?
All this fuss over a load of blooming foreigners. Why can't they stay where they belong?
Edward, how could you? I bet if your country was overrun by a brutal invader, you'd be grateful for a few kind words.
It'll all come back on us, you know, all the extra work. If you ask me, the mistress should have consulted us first.
I do wish you were going to be here tomorrow. I only speak schoolroom French.
Won't Uncle Richard be here?
No, he has a meeting at his club.
Well, I'll try and get home early. Anyway, they probably speak perfect English. Now, how does Billy like the Naval Brigade?
He says it's simply splendid. There are so many wonderful people in it. Hock Asquith, Rupert Brooke and Dennis Brown. And it's so exciting. Winston Churchill has promised them that if things get really bad in Belgium, he's going to rush them over to hold the line. Of course, it's a great secret.
Well, if it's such a great secret, he shouldn't have told you.
Oh, he knew I wouldn't tell anyone.
You told us.
But that's different.
I know the Naval Brigade is Winston's pet force, but I can't believe that even he would send completely untrained troops into the front line.
Yes, Uncle Richard, he's promised them faithfully. Billy was afraid the war would be over before Christmas and then he'd never see any fighting. But now he'll be in action before anyone. Isn't it splendid?
Yes, Edward?
The cab's here, sir, for Miss Georgina.
Thank you, Edward. I must rush or I miss my train. Goodbye, Uncle Richard. And don't work too hard while I'm away.
Send me a postcard and let me know when you'll be back.
I will.
Did you put writing paper in the bedroom, Edward?
Yes, Mr. Hudson.
And the mistress put flowers in the bedroom and the nursery too. Cheer 'em up.
Quite right, Daisy. After all they've been through, it is our task to make them feel at home.
Well, there's not much point in us all being here, is there, Mr. Hudson? I mean, I shouldn't think there'd be much luggage.
Maybe not, Edward. But even if they arrive at our door destitute, they are our guests. And we shall behave towards them as we do to all guests in this house.
Yes, Mr. Hudson.
Mr. Bellamy.
This is Mr. Bellamy's house.
Oh, good. You're refugees. Shagon. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Good evening.
The Belgian visitors, madam.
Yes. Vous êtes bienvenue. Entrez. Entrez, madame. S'il vous plaît. Et madame. Allez. Entrez, monsieur.
I don't know, Rose. We'd better serve tea than ask the mistress for orders as to sleeping accommodation. Edward?
Daisy, go and put them toys away. And lock the toy cupboard. Yeah. Would you like to put that on the floor? Here. I wasn't going to steal it, you know.
Rose!
Sorry, Mr. Hudson.
Rose, I expect it's all she has in the world. She just wants to hold on to it.
Yes, madam. I'll get another cup.
Shall I take her? À moi. So. There. Manger?
Oh, madam, wouldn't put the little girl on your lap if I was you.
Oh, why not, Rose? Oh, I see.
Why not put it on the floor?
Ici. There. Perhaps when she's had something to eat and a glass of milk. Daisy, you could run her a bath with some carbolic in it.
Yes, madam, I think she'd better.
I should put the milk and sugar in, Rose. The Belgian lady
Manger,
doesn't seem to
madame.
understand.
Don't scratch. Manger. Oui, madame. Et bon. Oui.
Qu'est-ce que c'est?
Je sais pas.
What on earth is going on?
Oh, sir,
Hudson?
the Belgian visitors, sir, they're not quite what we expected.
Please. Daisy,
My dear Hazel, what the...
I can't make them understand.
Silence! Edward, put him down. Attendez ici! Hazel.
Richard. The children are crawling with lice, and the others too, for all I know. Now, their rooms are ready for them upstairs, but I wanted them to have baths first, so they'd all be lovely.
Upstairs, set out of the question, they're Belgian peasants. I can't imagine who put them into the morning room in the first place.
But what are we to do with them?
Well, obviously they must go down to the kitchen and be looked after there. Now, you'll see to it, Hudson.
Very good, sir.
This is like a bear garden. More than 30 years.
Ruby, get that cowboy hat off my... Oh.
Yeah, Ruby.
Edward.
Ruby, come help me with these mashed potatoes.
Coming, Mrs. Bridges. Right, there we are. Oh. Right. Now, you, Bath, come on. Here. Come here.
No, stop.
You.
Stop. It says, I'm Belge. I'm Belge. I inquired for Miss Georgina and discovered that in France and Belgium, in farming circles, it is the privilege of the head of the household to cut the bread for the family.
Oh. Where's Edward? Oh, he ought to be here. He hasn't finished in the dining room yet.
Well, but where is he?
Monsieur Edouard, il est sorti il y a une heure.
Oh, really? Sorti?
Sorti. Go-nous.
I've gone out.
Oh, come out.
Edward, where have you been?
Edward?
I've been to join up, Mr. Hudson.
Oh, could you, without telling me first?
What if I told you first, you'd try to stop me?
Yes, I would. And so would Mr. Hudson and the master if they'd known.
Well, I don't belong to them, Daisy. I don't belong to anyone, not even you. Well, you wouldn't think much of me if I did.
You better come and sit down and have your dinner, Edward.
Well, you see, Mr. Hudson, well, everyone kept saying what I ought to do. I mean, well, you and the master and Daisy here saying I shouldn't join up. Well, there was Lady Berkhamsted and Lady Prudence and that bit of paper said I should.
And Lord Kitchener.
Well, see, I never did think much of the war. I mean, to me, it was just a lot of foreigners bashing each other. But well, when I heard about what they were doing over in Belgium, I mean, you can't let people do things like that and get away with it. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Hudson. I know you've taught me everything I know, but well, this time I had to do what I thought was right.
That's what it means, Edward.
Mr. Hudson?
That's what belonging to yourself means. Doing what you think is right.
Oh, yes, Mr. Hudson.
What regiment did you join, my boy?
Oh, the Middlesex, Mr. Hudson. Same as my brother.
Monsieur Edouard, qu'est-ce que c'est? On comprend pas, nous.
Soldat moi. Bang, bang.
Tu es devenu soldat. C'est bon, ça.
Oh, ben alors, on aura certainement gagné la guerre.
D'accord.
We have only just heard the news of the fall of Antwerp. I expect you know more about the war than we do. Men have been simply splendid. I believe we're one of the few brigades who retreated from Mons with all our equipment. Since then, we've seen quite out of action. I expect you can guess where we are. There's a salient in the German line of advance, a sort of bulge, a place called Ypres. I heard the lifeguards had been thrown in as a... well, to hold it. We're getting quite expert at digging trenches. The weather's awful, rain and mud everywhere. I hope we don't get bogged down here for the winter. Please give my love to Hazel and ask her to send me out some flea powder and some warm socks. Best love, James.
I hear you've enlisted, Edward.
Yes, my lady.
When do you have to go?
Well, they're going to let me know, my lady.
Well done. We must all do what we can.
Lady Prudence, madam.
Prudence?
Good morning, Richard.
Would you like some coffee, Prudence?
No, thank you, my dear. I can't stop for more than a second. I'm on my way to see Connie Hardcastle. I really just came round to bring you some good news. I've managed to get rid of your Belgians for you. They're sending them off today to a potato farm in Cambridgeshire. They'll be able to make themselves useful there, and they'll feel quite at home.
You know, I'm really going to miss them.
They'll be much better in the country.
Come along now, the cab's waiting. Say goodbye.
Goodbye. Goodbye. Goodbye. Goodbye, monsieur. Goodbye. And good luck. Goodbye. Goodbye. Have a good journey.
Bye.